Tom Harris had lived a life of quiet resignation. A janitor by day, and a single father every moment in between, he found solace in the simple routines that carried him from one day to the next. The rhythm of sweeping floors, the dull hum of the vacuum cleaner, and the low murmur of office workers were his constant companions. But Tom wasn't always the man with the mop and bucket. Once, he had been a hopeful young man, a dreamer. Music had been his first love, the piano, his first passion. But life had a way of curbing even the most noble of ambitions. After his wife's untimely death from a long illness, Tom was left to raise 2 small children alone. There were no more music lessons, no more dreams of concert halls and stage lights. Every decision, every waking moment, was devoted to making sure his kids, Lily and Sam, were safe, fed, and loved. The bills piled up, and the dreams slowly faded into distant memories. At 42, Tom had grown accustomed to his role as the invisible man in the office building he worked at. The suits and ties marched in and out of the building, with their heads held high, while Tom cleaned up after them. He was one of the unseen, one of the people whose names were rarely spoken, whose stories were never told. And yet, Tom had a secret. He could play the piano. It wasn't something he talked about. In fact, most people didn't even know. His piano was tucked away in the corner of the living room, where his children would occasionally sit and listen to him play the few pieces he still remembered. But time had dulled his skill, and there was no place for music in his life anymore. It was an ordinary Wednesday afternoon when everything changed. The lunch break in the office building was filled with chatter, the clinking of coffee mugs, and the soft hum of office machinery. As usual, Tom was cleaning the break room, methodically wiping down counters, emptying the trash, and silently watching as the employees milled about. A few of the younger staff members were gathered in a corner, laughing loudly at something one of them had said. Tom paid them no mind. He had learned long ago not to engage with the well-dressed, high-powered professionals who roamed the halls. But then he overheard something that stopped him in his tracks. "I heard he used to play the piano," one of them said, smirking. "Imagine that, a janitor who thinks he's a pianist." The others laughed, some rolling their eyes, others shaking their heads. "Hey, Tom," another voice called out. "Why don't you give us a tune? Let's see what you've got. You claim to be a pianist, after all." The laughter that followed was light-hearted but taunting. Tom felt the heat rise in his cheeks. He wasn't one to engage in jokes at his own expense, but something about the words stung more than usual. Tom, ever the quiet one, said nothing at first. But then, to his own surprise, he stood up straight. There was a piano in the corner of the break room, a relic from some long-forgotten office event. Its keys were yellowing, its surface dusted with time. But Tom felt a strange pull, an old flame reigniting in his chest. His hands tingled as he walked over to the piano. The room fell silent. "Go ahead, Tom. Show us what you've got," one of the younger employees dared him, grinning widely. Tom didn't answer. He sat down at the piano, his fingers brushing against the worn ivory keys. His breath caught for a moment, the familiar weight of the music, both comforting and intimidating. He hadn't played in years. Could he still remember the songs? And then, his fingers found the first notes. Slowly at first, then with growing confidence, he began to play. The music that poured from the piano wasn't the simple melody of a beginner, nor the hurried, clumsy notes of a man out of practice. No, it was something else. It was a symphony of emotion, of longing, of memories, and of dreams long forgotten. Tom's fingers danced across the keys with a fluidity that shocked everyone in the room. Rachel Morgan, the CEO of the company, had been sitting in her office when she heard the faint sound of piano music. She frowned, annoyed at the interruption. What was this? Another one of Tom's antics? She had no patience for such distractions. Her company was under pressure, and she had no time to waste. But as she walked towards the sound, her annoyance began to fade. There was something different in the music, something hauntingly beautiful. She stepped into the break room and froze. There at the piano sat Tom Harris, the janitor. His hands moved effortlessly, the music flowing from him with the kind of grace and depth that only true musicians possessed. Rachel's eyes widened. She had no idea. The room was silent. Even the employees who had gathered around to mock him just moments before stood transfixed by the music. It was as if time had stopped. The song Tom played wasn't something familiar, it wasn't a pop song or a tune from the radio. It was an original piece, soft yet powerful, full of emotion. Tom played from a place deep within himself, his heart laid bare in each note. The music told the story of a man who had lost everything, but who still had hope. It was a song of pain, of love, and of resilience. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. She hadn't expected this. She had expected a joke, a few clumsy notes, perhaps a half-hearted attempt to impress the office. But what she heard, what she felt, was something far more profound. She wasn't the only one who was moved. One by one, the employees in the room began to realize what they were hearing. The laughter had stopped. The jokes faded into the background. All that was left was the music. Tom's hands slowed as the song came to an end, but the room remained still. No one spoke. The silence was deafening. Rachel was the first to break the silence. Her voice was quiet, but her words cut through the stillness like a blade. "That was beautiful," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Tom turned to look at her, his face red with embarrassment. I didn't mean to cause any trouble," he muttered, standing up and brushing his hands against his pants. But Rachel was already stepping forward, her gaze focused on him with a new intensity. "No," she said, her voice firm but kind. "You didn't cause any trouble. You've done something none of us could do. You've shown us something real, something we've all forgotten." The employees in the room stood in stunned silence, their earlier dismissiveness gone. They were no longer looking at Tom the janitor. They were looking at Tom the musician, the man with a heart full of stories yet to be told. Rachel turned to the room. "I think we've all learned something today, and I believe it's time we show Tom the respect he deserves." After that day, everything changed for Tom. It wasn't just that people started treating him differently, it was that they started seeing him differently. His talents were recognized, and slowly, very slowly, he began to open up to the possibilities of what could come next. Rachel Morgan became more than just a CEO to Tom. She became a mentor, a guide who encouraged him to pursue his music once more. She even arranged for him to take lessons from a professional pianist, someone who could help him refine his skills and perhaps, just maybe, give him a chance at the life he had once dreamed of. Tom began to play again, not just for his children, but for himself. He started composing his own music, capturing the pain and beauty of life in every note. He played in small venues at first, then larger ones, slowly building a name for himself, and as his music grew, so did his family's life. They no longer lived paycheck to paycheck. Tom's newfound success allowed them to live with dignity, and for the first time in years, he began to feel as if his dreams were within reach. Years passed, and Tom's music became known far beyond the walls of the office building. He had become a symbol of perseverance and talent, a reminder that sometimes the greatest stories are the ones that go untold. One evening, at one of his concerts, Rachel sat in the front row, tears once again in her eyes as she listened to Tom play. She had been with him from the very beginning, from the janitor who had been asked to play as a joke to the musician whose music had touched the hearts of thousands. And as the final note of the night lingered in the air, Rachel knew that, in some strange way, they had both saved each other. Tom had found his voice again, and in doing so, he had found his true self. And Rachel? Well, she had learned that sometimes the greatest leaders are those who see the potential in others, even when the world refuses to. Months passed, and Tom's impact continued to grow, not only in his personal life, but within the business world as well. His success wasn't just measured in the number of performances or the fame that followed. It was in the lives he touched, the doors he opened for others, and the example he set for those who felt invisible, just as he once had. Tom's journey was not an isolated one. It rippled through his family, his colleagues, and even his community. Lily, now fully immersed in her violin studies, had begun playing at small venues and charity events. Sam, still learning the ropes of piano, started to compose his own music, influenced deeply by the bond he shared with his father. Tom often found himself sitting at the piano, with Lily on the violin, as they created music together, a full-circle moment he had never anticipated, yet cherished deeply. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, the sun setting over the horizon, Tom sat at the piano, a soft smile on his lips. It had been a long day, meetings with partners, a charity event, a quick piano lesson for Sam, but there was something so peaceful about being at home, surrounded by his loved ones. "Dad," Lily began, her violin resting against her shoulder, "I've been thinking, what if we started our own music school? Something for kids like us who don't always get the chance to be seen." Tom stopped playing for a moment, his fingers still resting on the keys. "What do you mean, kiddo?" he asked gently. "Well," she continued, "we could create a space where music and art are accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford it. We could teach kids who don't have the opportunity to learn, who feel like they're invisible, just like how you used to be." Tom's heart swelled with pride as he watched his daughter. "That's a beautiful idea, Lily, and it's exactly the kind of thing we should be doing. It's time to give back." That night, the Harris family sat together, brainstorming ideas for what would become their new project, an initiative dedicated to providing music education to underprivileged children, especially those who had been overlooked or forgotten by society. Launching the music school wasn't easy. There were countless meetings, paperwork, and negotiations with potential partners. Tom's name was now recognized in the music industry, but he was still an outsider in the world of education and nonprofits. It was Rachel, once again, who came to his aid. "Tom," she said one afternoon, as they sat in her office discussing the music school, "I want to help you take this to the next level. This isn't just about teaching music. This is about changing the lives of these kids, giving them opportunities they never thought possible." With Rachel's backing, Tom was able to secure funding for the school, and with his own connections in the arts, they began to gather a team of teachers and mentors. The vision was clear. It wasn't just about teaching piano, violin, or guitar. It was about showing kids their value, their potential, and giving them the skills to create their own futures. The school opened its doors to its first class of students, a mix of eager young faces from all walks of life. Some came from broken homes, some from impoverished neighborhoods, and some had parents who had never seen the value of music education. But Tom, Lily, and Sam welcomed them with open arms, showing them that they mattered, that their voices, through music, could be heard. A year after the school opened, it was time for their first recital. The auditorium was filled with family members, volunteers, and donors who had supported the school. The children who had once been shy, unsure of their abilities, were now standing proudly on stage, their instruments in hand, ready to perform. Tom stood backstage, watching as his students prepared. He could feel his heart racing in his chest, but it wasn't fear, it was pride. This was what he had dreamed of, creating a space for others to find their voices, to discover their potential. As the lights dimmed, the music began. One by one, the students played their pieces. Some were nervous, but with each note, they gained confidence. The audience sat in awe as these children, who had once been ignored, now played with passion and precision. Then, as the final piece approached, Tom was called onto the stage. His heart skipped a beat as Lily and Sam joined him on stage, their instruments in hand. Together, they performed a piece they had composed together, a melody that reflected their journey as a family, full of hope, struggle, and resilience. As the final note hung in the air, the audience erupted into applause, and Tom's eyes welled up with tears. This was it, the culmination of everything he had worked for. He had not only transformed his own life, but he had helped others do the same. Years passed, and the music school continued to grow. It became a beacon of hope for children across the city, and Tom's life became a testament to the power of perseverance, love, and community. His performances grew larger, and the school expanded, reaching more and more children every year. Tom's story was now known beyond New York, shared in articles and interviews, as an example of what could happen when you refuse to give up on your dreams. One day, as Tom walked through the school's halls, he was stopped by one of the former students, now a young adult. "Mr. Harris," the student said, his voice full of gratitude, "I just wanted to thank you. You've changed my life. I never thought I'd be able to do this, but now I'm studying music in college, and it's all because of you." Tom smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "I didn't change your life," he said. "You changed your life. I just gave you a chance to see what you were capable of." One evening, as Tom sat at the piano in his home, Lily and Sam beside him, he reflected on his journey. From the janitor who played piano as a joke, to the man who had built a school that would change countless lives, he had truly come full circle. His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. It was Rachel. "Tom," she said on the other end, We've been asked to give a TED Talk about the impact of the school. They want you to share your story." Tom chuckled. "My story? The janitor, who became a musician?" "Yes," Rachel replied with a smile in her voice. "But more than that, your story is one of hope, resilience, and the power of music. It's exactly the message the world needs to hear." As Tom looked around at his family, his children, his friends, his community, he realized she was right. His story wasn't just about music. It was about believing in yourself, no matter where you start, and helping others find their way. And with that, Tom Harris sat back down at the piano, his fingers once again dancing over the keys. He wasn't just playing music, he was creating a legacy. And this time, the world was listening. As Tom stood backstage, preparing for the TED Talk, a sense of calm washed over him. It wasn't the same nervous energy he had once felt when performing in front of an audience, unsure of himself and his talent. No, this time, he felt a quiet strength, a confidence that came from years of self-discovery and the knowledge that he had created something meaningful. The stage was set. The lights dimmed as the host introduced him, and the audience hushed in anticipation. Tom stepped out, his fingers trembling slightly as he gripped the microphone. He wasn't there to talk about the mechanics of running a school or the technicalities of his music career. He was there to share a story, the story of his life, and how a single moment of vulnerability had led to an entire movement of change. "Good evening, everyone," Tom began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I'm here to tell you a story, not just about me, but about the people who've helped me get to where I am today." The audience was silent, hanging on to every word. Tom had always been a man of few words, but now he had so much to say. "My journey didn't start on a stage, and it didn't start with an audience applauding me. It started with a mop and a bucket. I was a janitor, a single father struggling to survive. I had dreams, yes, but those dreams were buried beneath the weight of responsibility and the harsh realities of life. Music was my escape, but it seemed so far out of reach." He paused, his eyes scanning the crowd. "But then something happened. I was asked to play the piano, just a joke, really, but that joke turned into a turning point in my life. It was the moment I realized that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible, that I had something to offer the world, and from that moment on, I began to rebuild my life." Tom smiled, a small but genuine smile. "I didn't do it alone. I had the support of my children, my friends, and an incredible woman named Rachel, who believed in me when no one else did. Together, we created something that's bigger than music, a space where children can be seen, where they can find their voice through art, and where they can realize that they are worthy of a future full of possibility." The audience was captivated, and Tom could feel their energy. He continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "We started a music school for underprivileged children, giving them access to education and opportunity they might not have had otherwise. But it's not just about learning to play an instrument. It's about teaching them that they are more than their circumstances, that they are worthy, that they have the power to change their own lives." As he spoke, Tom's heart swelled with pride. He had come so far further than he ever could have imagined, and now, standing on this stage, he was no longer the janitor. He was Tom Harris, a man who had dared to believe in himself. As the TED Talk came to a close, Tom felt a wave of emotion wash over him. This wasn't just about telling his story, it was about inspiring others to tell theirs. "But here's the truth," Tom continued. "The journey doesn't stop here. It's not just about me, and it's not just about my school. It's about each and every one of us realizing that we have the power to make a difference. We all have a gift, a talent, something we can share with the world. And it doesn't matter where you come from or what obstacles you face. It matters what you do with your gift." The audience erupted into applause, but Tom knew that the real work had only just begun. The TED Talk was just one step in a much larger mission. In the months following the TED Talk, Tom's life took on a new dimension. His school flourished, attracting more donors, more volunteers, and more children eager to learn. He began traveling to different cities, speaking at conferences, and meeting with organizations that were dedicated to giving children a voice through the arts. His mission was no longer confined to one school or one city. It was a global movement, and Tom was determined to see it grow. The music school expanded, with branches opening in other cities, and soon, even other countries. What had started as a small, grassroots effort became an international movement, bringing together people from all walks of life to share the transformative power of music. But with this growth came new challenges. Running a global organization required more than passion. It required strategy, structure, and leadership. And for the first time in his life, Tom found himself at the helm of something much larger than he had ever imagined. Rachel remained by his side, guiding him through the intricacies of running an international organization. Together, they built a team of dedicated individuals who shared their vision, and with their help, Tom continued to inspire children and adults alike to reach for their dreams. As Tom's mission expanded, so did the impact on his family. Lily, now in her early 20s, had completed her violin studies and joined the school as a teacher and mentor. Sam, still learning the piano, was beginning to make a name for himself as a composer, following in his father's footsteps. Tom couldn't have been prouder of his children. He had never imagined that his journey would lead them to such places, but he was grateful for every moment they shared. The family, united by music, had become a living testament to the power of love, perseverance, and the belief that anything was possible. They spent their evenings together, playing music, laughing, and sharing stories of their day. For Tom, this was the life he had always dreamed of, surrounded by the people he loved, doing what he was passionate about, and knowing that he had made a difference in the world. Years later, as Tom sat in a concert hall, watching Lily and Sam perform a duet, he felt a profound sense of peace. His life had come full circle. From the janitor who had once been invisible, to the man who had changed the lives of thousands, he had discovered something more important than fame or success: the power to create a legacy, not through wealth or recognition, but through the lives he had touched and the lives yet to be touched. As the final note of the performance echoed in the hall, Tom looked around at the audience, his eyes lingering on his family. He knew that their journey wasn't over. There was still so much to do, so much to give. But for now, in this moment, he was content. He had played his part, and the world was better for it. As Tom's global movement continued to grow, so did the challenges that came with it. Running an international organization meant more than just performing in front of audiences or talking about his mission. It meant making tough decisions, managing expectations, and constantly innovating to keep the movement alive. While Tom loved seeing the fruits of his labor, the constant pressure to keep expanding weighed on him. He had always been a man of passion, but now, he found himself navigating the intricacies of business strategy, financial management, and global operations. The music school was more than just an idea. It was a vast network that required precision and careful management. Tom often found himself staying late into the night, poring over spreadsheets, emails, and plans. It wasn't the same joy he had felt when he was playing music or teaching children. It was a different kind of work, a work that required patience, attention to detail, and a constant drive for improvement. Rachel had always been by his side, supporting him in ways that Tom could never quite explain. She was more than a colleague or a mentor. She had become a close friend, someone who understood the weight of what he was carrying. Together, they made decisions that would shape the future of the school, pushing for growth while making sure it remained true to its original mission of providing a voice for underprivileged children. One evening, as they sat in a conference room reviewing the latest growth projections, Tom leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Rachel, do you ever wonder if we've taken on too much?" Tom asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "We've reached so many children, but is it enough? What if we lose sight of what we set out to do in the beginning?" Rachel looked up from the documents in front of her and smiled softly. "Tom, we've built something incredible here. Yes, it's a lot of work, but you can't doubt the impact we've had. The lives we've changed, the stories we've written together, it's all worth it, but I do think it's time to expand the team. We can't do this alone." Tom nodded, grateful for her words, but the doubt lingered. He had always been the one to take on the responsibility, to make the decisions, but Rachel was right, he couldn't carry the weight alone. As the school grew, so did the need for a team of leaders who could help shoulder the burden. The following months were marked by significant changes at the school. Tom and Rachel worked closely to hire a group of passionate, driven individuals who could help manage the day-to-day operations and bring fresh ideas to the table. This new team was diverse. Some came from nonprofit backgrounds, others from education, and some from the music industry itself. They were united by one common goal: to continue the mission of giving every child a chance to be seen and heard. Among the new hires was a young woman named Eliza, a passionate advocate for arts education who had spent years working with underprivileged children in rural areas. She quickly became one of Tom's most trusted allies, helping him balance the creative aspects of the school with the operational needs of a growing organization. "I'm excited to be part of this," Eliza said during one of their strategy meetings. "But I also want to make sure we don't lose the personal touch. The kids who come here, they need more than just a place to learn. They need a community." Tom agreed, and with Eliza's help, they developed new programs that emphasized mentorship and personal development. The school became not just a place to learn music, but a place where children could grow emotionally, develop confidence, and feel part of something bigger than themselves. As the team worked to expand the school's reach, they also found new ways to collaborate with local communities and organizations. They partnered with shelters, community centers, and other nonprofits to provide free music lessons to children who couldn't afford tuition. It wasn't just about making money, it was about providing access to opportunities that had once seemed out of reach. Amidst all the growth and expansion, Tom never lost sight of what had truly brought him to this point: his family. Lily and Sam had both become an integral part of the school. Lily, with her violin skills, helped mentor younger students, while Sam had taken up composing and now helped to create music for the school's performances and projects. Together, they were building something that not only changed the world, but brought them closer together as a family. One evening, as Tom sat down for dinner with Lily and Sam, they began discussing the future of the school. "Dad," Sam said, his voice filled with enthusiasm, "I've been thinking, what if we start a summer camp for kids who want to learn music? We could bring in guest teachers, have performances, and really immerse them in music." Tom looked at his son, the pride welling up in his chest. "That's a great idea, Sam. I think it would be a wonderful way to reach even more kids and give them a chance to experience what we're all about." Lily, who had been quiet up until that point, spoke up. "I agree, but we should also think about creating more online resources for kids who can't come to the school in person. Music lessons, videos, even virtual mentorship. We could reach kids all over the world." Tom smiled at the two of them. They had become not just his children, but partners in this mission. Their passion and ideas were shaping the future of the school, and Tom knew that he could trust them to carry on the legacy. Just as the school was hitting its stride, a new challenge emerged. A financial crisis threatened to derail everything they had built. Several major donors pulled out of their commitments, citing economic downturns, and Tom found himself scrambling to make up the difference. Rachel and Tom sat in her office one late afternoon, staring at the budget spreadsheet in front of them. The numbers were tight, and the reality of the situation began to sink in. If they couldn't secure new funding, the future of the school would be uncertain. "We've worked so hard for this, Tom," Rachel said, her voice quiet but determined. "We can't let it fall apart now. We need to think creatively, find new ways to bring in funding, and we need to do it fast." Tom nodded, his mind racing with ideas. "Maybe it's time to launch a global fundraising campaign, something that tells the story of what we've done and why it matters. If we can get people to see the difference we're making, they'll want to help." It wasn't going to be easy, but Tom was used to fighting for what he believed in. Together, he and Rachel put together a plan to launch an international campaign, calling on their network of supporters to help keep the school afloat. They reached out to celebrities, local influencers, and even former students to share their stories and raise awareness. The response was overwhelming. Within weeks, donations started pouring in from all corners of the globe, and the school's financial footing was secured. The crisis had been averted, but it had also shown Tom something he had always known deep down. This wasn't just his mission, it was everyone's mission. And when people came together, there was nothing they couldn't accomplish. As the school moved into its next phase, Tom found himself reflecting on how far they had come. What had started as a joke, Tom sitting at a piano in a break room, had turned into something extraordinary. The music school had changed the lives of thousands of children, and the ripple effect was just beginning. Tom had gone from being a janitor to a leader, from a man with no voice to someone who inspired others to find theirs. And while the future remained uncertain, Tom knew that the mission he had set out on was more important than ever. As he sat in the same break room where it had all started, watching his family and team prepare for the next phase of the school's journey, Tom smiled. His story wasn't over, but it was only just beginning.